8-1 angles of rotation. So we're going to start working with trigonometry, which just means triangle measurements. These are going to be when we're working with these angles, we're going to be working with degrees. And your degrees with this, normally in geometry, you go from 0 to 180 and then you're done. However, with trigonometry, you're working from anything between 0 and 360 and anything below 0 as well. So these can be negative angles also that we're working with. When you are doing angles of rotation, you are working with different angles. So you have sides with these angles. Your initial side is the side that's going to stay where it's at. It's going to be on your x-axis. And then you have a terminal side, which is the side that's moving. That terminal side will move either counterclockwise or clockwise for either positive or negative angles, and will give you that degree measurement. So if we're working with a positive angle, that terminal side will move counterclockwise, and if we're working with a negative angle, that terminal side will move clockwise from that x-axis. So we have angles of rotation, which are formed by rotating that terminal side and keeping the initial side in place. That initial side, again, is going to stay on the x-axis, the positive x-axis, and that terminal side is just what's moving. So when we are looking at drawing angles, you're always going to start on the positive x-axis. That's going to be your initial side. If the angle is positive, move counterclockwise, so move up for positive from that positive x-axis. And then if the angle is negative, move clockwise or move down from that positive x-axis. For our first part in this lesson, we are drawing an angle with the given measurement in standard position. So with these, you want to try to give yourself your parameters. You know that you're going to start on the positive x-axis. So our first side, our initial side, will be on that positive x-axis. Remember, that's 0. Your 90-degree angle is the top one, then it's 180, then 270. So knowing this, our terminal side is going to go in between the 270 and the 0. So it's going to be somewhere about here. And then the only thing that we have left to do from here is to draw our circular arrow to make sure that we know which way this is opening. So then we label, and then we're done. So for B, we're working with 150 degrees. So we're going to start with 0 again. However, it's going clockwise now. So it's going to be negative 90 on the bottom, negative 180 to the left, and then negative 270 on the top. So our initial side, again, is going to start at 0. And then we're going to go to negative 150. So that negative 150 is in between the negative 90 and the negative 180. And then our angle is opening down, so we draw that circular angle, or that circular arrow down, and give negative 150 degrees. For C, we have 900 degrees, so this is more than 360, so we're going to label this 0, 90, 180, 270, then it's at 360, 360 plus 90 is 450. If we add 90 to that, we have 540. So this 180 is also 540. Oops. If we add 90 to that, we're at 630. And then if we add 90 to that, we're at 720. This still isn't giving us a 900, so we'll keep adding 90. This is going to be 810 on the top, plus 90 is the 900 that we're looking for. So when we do this, we are going to have an initial angle on our positive x-axis, and then our terminal angle is the one that's on the negative x-axis. And then when we draw that circular arrow, we're going to go around how many times? We went around once, then twice, and then halfway the third time. So 1, 2, 3, and then we label it 900 degrees. For our next example, D, we have 210 degrees. So again, we have 0, we have 90, we have 180, we have 270. our initial side is going to be on that positive x-axis, and then that 210 is going to be somewhere about here. So then we just draw our arrow up and around and label it 210 degrees. So for E, we have 1020 degrees. So remember, we did this already. We had 0, 360, 720. Then we also had 90, 450, and 810. For this one, we had 180, 540, and 900. Down here, we had 270 and 630. If we added the 90 to the 900, that's 990. And then the 990 plus 90 gives us 1080. So now over here is 1080. So we are going to have our initial side on our positive x-axis, and then our 1020 is going to be about here. So we're going to go around how many times? We go around once to get 360, twice to get 720, 3 times to get to that 1020. So 1, 2, 3. And then we just label it 1000 or 1020 degrees. For F, we have negative 300 degrees, so we're going to start 0 here, then go down to negative 90, negative 180, negative 270, and then negative 360. So our initial side is going to be on the positive x-axis, and then that 300 is going to be about here. So we're going to go down and around to give that negative 300 degrees. Coterminal angles are angles in standard position with the same terminal side. For example, angle measurements 120 and negative 240 are coterminal. In order to get your coterminal angles, add and subtract 360 to or from the original angle. You must have a positive angle and a negative angle. So if we look at our first example, we're finding the measures of a positive angle and a negative angle that are coterminal with each given angle. So for A, we're given the angle 40 degrees. So with this, if we do positive and negative, I'm going to do 40 plus 360. That's going to give me 400. Then I also can do 40 minus 360. So that's going to give me negative 320. So my coterminal angles to 40 degrees are 400 degrees and negative 320 degrees. If we look at B, we're given 380 degrees. So if we take the 380 degrees, for this one, we're actually going to subtract 360 first because we know that 380 is larger than 360, and that's going to give us a positive angle. So we're going to subtract 360 from this to give ourselves 20 degrees. So that's 1. Since we don't have a negative angle yet, we're going to actually take that 20 and subtract 360 from it. 20 minus 360 is going to give us a negative 340 degrees. So that's our negative angle that goes with this. So we're looking again for a positive and a negative angle for 380. So we're giving the coterminal angles of 380 degrees are 20 degrees and negative 340 degrees. For example, C, we have 88 degrees. So we're going to start by adding the 360. 8 and 0 is 8. 8 and 6 is 14. 1 and 3 is 4. So that's 448 degrees. From here, we're also going to subtract 360. If you wanted to rewrite this, you could, to where it's negative 360 plus 88. So then we're going to deal with a negative, our higher number, or a bigger number. Between the 360 and the 88 is the negative 360, so we're going to keep the sign. And we're going to subtract these. So the 0 becomes a 10, the 6 becomes a 5, which then becomes 15, making the 3 a 2. So 10 minus 8 is 2, 15 minus 8 is 7, and 2 minus 0 is 2. So that's negative 272 degrees. So we have 448 degrees and negative 272 degrees that are coterminal angles to 88 degrees. For D, we have 500 degrees. So we're going to take the 500 and we're going to subtract 360. Since 360 is smaller than 500, the 0 becomes a 10, the next 0 becomes a 9, the 5 becomes a 4. So 10 minus 0, did that wrong. Okay, let's try this one more time. 0 minus 0 is 0. The 0 on top of the 6 becomes a 10, making the 5 a 4. So 10 minus 6 is 4, and 4 minus 3 is 1. So it's 140 degrees. We're going to take that 140 degrees and subtract 360 from that as well. And again, if you wanted to rewrite this to make things easier for yourself, you have negative 360 plus 140. So 0 minus 0 is 0, 6 minus 4 is 2, 3 minus 1 is 2. Keep the negative. So that's negative 220 degrees and 140 degrees that are coterminal angles of 500 degrees. For E, we have negative 120 degrees. So because this is already negative, we're going to add the 360 to it. Which means we're subtracting. So if we subtract these two, we have 0, 4, and 2. So that's a positive 240. We also are going to subtract subtract 360 degrees. So keep the negative, add the 2 since they're both the same signs. 0, 8, 4. So negative 480 degrees. For F, we have 30 degrees, so 30 plus 360 is 390. And then 30 minus 360 is 330. 330. So because this 330 is negative and we have a positive 390, we have our two coterminal angles. Our next part of your lesson deals with reference angles. When we are working with reference angles, we want to use angles to find trigonometric values of angles measuring greater than 90 degrees or less than 0. So your answers have to be an acute angle, okay? So they have to be anywhere between 90 and 0 degrees. So with these angles, you are either working with 360 or 180, whichever one is going to give you the angle measurement that's between 0 and 90. So we're going to start with A. We have the angle of 150 degrees. So we wouldn't need to use 360, but 180 we can use because 180 minus 150 gives us 30 degrees. So that would be our terminal angle. Remember, if you did 360 minus 150, you're going to get 0, 1, and 2. 210 degrees is not an acute angle, so you cannot use the 360 for it. So again, you got to pick which one you can use, which is better off. For B, so what I failed to give you here is subtract 360 and 180 from the original angle. If the original angle is negative, you're adding 180 and 360. These are positive angles between 0 and 90. So for the negative 130, we can add 180 to it, which means that we're just subtracting 180 minus 130, which is 50 degrees. That is an acute angle, so that's our answer. Again, if we did 360 minus 130, we're getting 0, 3, and 2. 230 is not an acute angle, so that cannot be our answer. For C, we have 280 degrees. So if we did 280 and we subtracted 180 from it, we would get 100. That's not an acute angle, so try 360 minus 280. 0 minus 0 is 0. The 6 becomes 16, making the 3 a 2. 16 minus 80 is 8. 16 minus 8 is 8, and 2 minus 2 is 0. So 80 degrees is our reference angle for this one. For D, we have 105 degrees. So we're going to start with 180 minus 105. Subtract those. The 10, then the 8 becomes a 7. 10 minus 5 is 5. 7 minus 0 is 7. 1 minus 1 is 0. So 75 degrees is an acute angle. That's our reference angle. For E, we have negative 115. So we're going to start with 180 minus 115. The 0 becomes a 10, making the 8 a 7. 10 minus 5 is 5. 7 minus 1 is 6. 65 is an acute angle, so we don't have to go any further from there. For F, we have 310. So if we did 310 minus 180, this is going to give us a 0. This becomes a 10. This 3 becomes a 2. So this is a 120. This is not an acute angle, so that's not going to work. Take 360 and subtract 310 from it then. This is going to give us 50 degrees, and that's an acute angle, so that's our reference angle.